Thank you for checking out this week's episode of the Giles and the Goalie podcast. If you can, we would like to ask you a couple of favors before we start our otherwise fine podcast this week. First of which is, if you can go to zonecoverage.com/subscribe, use the promo code GATG20. You can get a year's subscription to Zone Coverage for just $20. Gives you access to all of the great content across our website, but more importantly, helps pay for the production of our otherwise fine podcast. If you can't, hey, we get it. The other thing you can do to help us out is, if you're an iTunes listener, go on iTunes and give us a rating, good or bad. It helps us out immensely. Again, that's GATG20 is a promo code for zonecoverage.com/subscribe. Or again, just drop us a rating on iTunes if you listen via that platform. That is all that I ask. Thank you so much for listening again this week, and enjoy the new episode of Giles and the Goalie.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get stinko.
Welcome, Giles and the Goalie podcast, from the... What studios are we calling this? This isn't the Midway. This isn't the U of M.
This is Dinkytown.
Okay, it is Dinkytown. From
Technically
Dinkytown Studios. This is the Giles and the Goalie podcast. In the backyard of our old Cumulus location.
We are not
studios.
in the cupboard under the stairs anymore.
Yeah, they kicked us out.
Yeah, that we're not even good enough for the cupboard under the stairs.
Yeah, we weren't upgraded to Dudley's second bedroom. We just got straight kicked out.
We just ended up in the backyard with a cheap tent.
Yeah, exactly. I am your host, Giles Farrell. That is Ben Remington.
Hello.
We are special Monday recording. It might become maybe a slightly regular thing this year.
Yeah.
It remains to be seen, but since there's 300 days in between hockey games, we didn't feel the need to rush and get to the Sunday night recording. I was also covering the Gophers, so that kind of clamped down on doing a Sunday
I don't
show.
know how this is. Yeah, we'll see as the kind of season goes on. We have some flexibility, obviously. Hopefully, dear listener, you're not too upset with getting your podcast a day late. If you are rip-roaring pissed about it, sorry. But, I mean, it's just kind of how it's going to go. So let us know what you think, if you're okay with getting it Monday night or Tuesday morning or whatever.
Remake Field of Dreams now with the premise of, if you record it, they will listen.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, that doesn't mean that it's a good decision on their part.
That's true. I mean, yeah, the season is underway.
Yay.
We had 2 games, and of course, as such as every October schedule, we get 6 days till the next game, because why would we want any more in that time? And then we cram it all in March. We make up for lost time then.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Dubnik's remaining limbs just get destroyed. But the Wild got off to a horrible start, to be blunt. They lose both games in regulation. The opener 5-2 to Nashville, then to Colorado 4-2 on Saturday night. The first time since the inaugural season of 2000-2001, the Wild lose in regulation their first 2 hockey games.
Wow.
Scott Pellerin can go to bed easy now.
I did not know that.
That his record is done.
Yeah, good thing we have a bunch of time off, because when hockey season kicks up, the last thing you want is more hockey. Yeah, we'd rather have it crammed in when we're somewhere around month 5 or 6 of the season. That's when we want hockey every other night of the week.
You want your hockey full on in March when there's absolutely nothing else going on. No college basketball playoffs, no college hockey playoffs, no NBA getting into the going down to the wire of the postseason.
No.
NFL draft season, absolutely nothing going on at that point.
Baseball's almost starting.
You wouldn't want to,
the Masters.
Spring training. You wouldn't want to have, a lot going on in October when, there's no basketball yet, and college hockey really hasn't kicked in. You kind of have a little bit of an opening there that you might not have had.
Football's going on, but
the
NHL
all the games steer clears of Sunday
exactly
with a 10-foot pole.
All you do then is just avoid the weekends, and all the games they're cutting are during the week. Did you see the Rangers schedule?
Yeah,
they don't
absolutely
play
the same like
the entire
Wild.
week.
Right.
It's like what?
Especially with a young and exciting team like the Rangers.
What's that like?
Yeah, what is that like? How can you just have this continued crap schedule in October?
They're easing them into it. Maybe it's a union thing.
Boy, these players are just never happy with anything. You're gonna play 82 games, whatever.
Yeah.
So Wild 0-2 to start the season. Not at all a good start, especially for a team that kind of was saying all the optimistic things in training camp about getting back at it and maybe having a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Do you have any big takeaways from their first 2 games? I mean, they've kind of spoiled some pretty decent performances from Devin Dubnyk. He's had some pretty good saves in there.
Yeah.
But is there anything that enormously sticks out to you from the first 2 games? We're dealing with an enormously large sample size.
No, not really. It just kind of seems, I guess if anything sticks out to me, it's just I don't know why people are surprised by seeing the same thing over and over again. And maybe this is just a Wild Twitter being facetious kind of thing, but the only goals you really see against are these really kind of egregious defensive breakdowns in their own zone, which you don't see much of, but when it happens, it leads to a goal, right? So you don't see Spurgeon screw up often. When he does, the other team scores. You don't see Ryan Suter screw up very often. When he does, the other team scores. So I think there's been a fair amount of that, which we've seen, especially last year early when Suter was very rusty and whatnot. The team is having trouble scoring goals. Tell me if you've heard that before. And Devin Dubnyk.
Time is a flat circle.
Right? This is going to be the same episode as last week, people. I don't know if you've figured that out yet, but and Devin Dubnyk seems to be kind of streaky. I mean, he seemed like he was seeing the puck well and doing well, halfway through the Nashville game, and then it kind of got away from him a little bit. And kind of the Colorado game in reverse where, he didn't look so hot right off the bat. A couple of goals he couldn't really do much with, but then he was a little bit tighter towards the end of the game, I felt like. It's the same thing. It's the same damn thing. I just... That's my takeaway. Is just wow, it's usually from season to season you even in years past when the Wild had been the same damn team every year, you at least got off to something was different about that season. And this year, they added Matt Zuccarello. Bill Guerin is in charge, but wow, does this team feel like a clone of every other Wild season, personified?
Yeah. There's absolutely nothing that is different, and it's just so uninteresting.
Yeah.
And you just talking to kind of more casual friends of mine who are fans, and there's no interest.
No, none.
They also ask me, "What are the Wild gonna do?" And I tell them, "Well, they're probably gonna miss playoffs again." So I probably don't help them with their lack of interest anyway, but. Of course, Kevin Fiala misses the goal to tie it against Colorado when he apparently has been shooting pucks high in practice all training camp, and then when push comes to shove, he fires one just low and right into the pads of Philip Grubauer.
At least he didn't go the full Brodziak.
That's true.
You don't go full Brodziak.
Right. At least, or he didn't Miednin it and fire it up into the netting. Everything that seemingly could be bad is bad, except Jason Zucker and Matt Demba, who looking very sharp. Jason Zucker with 2 goals in 2 games, and Matt Demba had a goal in 2 games. He had one against Colorado taken away, but both looking very sharp. Look like they're going to provide some offense, but the problem is the other parts of the team need to step in and provide some offense. And kind of a concerning trend, maybe not a trend, but concerning to me in 2 games is Eric Stahl has been very, very ordinary. In fact, he's been below ordinary, below average, however you want to put it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the analytics have him not having a single shot attempt in the first 2 games, which is awful. That whole line has been not good. Zuccarello, Stahl, Parisi.
Well, they split him up.
Yeah, then they finally had to pull
after
the
one
plug.
game. They were like, it doesn't work.
They were on the ice for 3 goals against, I believe, in Nashville. So, they got broken up immediately. And Eric Stahl was not overly great in the face-off circle on Saturday night, if I remember right there. And he had a terrible defensive breakdown that led to the game-winning goal by Colorado.
Yeah, he's always been, and this is something that we haven't really brought up much, but our friend Tony from The Athletic, Tony Abbott, has brought this up before. Stahl has kind of always been a little bit of a defensive liability, and we've just been okay with that because he's produced, and he's scored a ton. And last year was kind of the beginning of the downslide, and of course, now he's got a contract extension, so the downslide continues. But early returns, it's only 2 games. But, it's just kind of, what you have to get production out of Stahl, or he is really not a top-line center. It's not, that sounds kind of stupid when put so simply, but he's not going to make up for it on the other end of the ice. That was, that's the excuse that us Mikko Koivu apologists have been using for years, is that, he doesn't produce a ton, but at least he's, damn near elite when it came to defense for many of his seasons here in Minnesota.
Right.
Eric Stahl is not that cat. He is not that dude, and if he is not scoring goals or setting up his line mates, he is a negative player, and that's just kind of the unfortunate truth of it. So especially at this point in his career, at least. So that's just kind of what we're looking at with him, and really kind of is very unfortunate heading into now he's actually into that extension.
Yeah, and not that I endorse this, but in 2 games his plus-minus is -5.
Just
to show how egregious that it's kind of an outlier of how egregious he's been. Plus-minus, we've talked about this. It's not. It's a good indicator, but that does kind of paint a little picture of how he's been the first 2 games.
Plus-minus doesn't really tell you much. Except for sometimes it tells you when a player is really bad. And this would be one of those instances.
Only averaging 13.02 in the first 2 games as well.
Oh, that's surprising.
Kind of spread out the ice time a little bit. I think Matt Demba's the leader in ice time through the first couple of games. But, if you're looking for positives, Matt Demba's looked great. No ill effects from his injury from last year. So hopefully he's answered the code, the Calgary Flames Book of Rules, which now they have Milan Lucic enforcing their rule book. So good luck with that. But he's looked very good. That's kind of my positive. I really can't find a whole lot more. Ryan Donato hasn't been inspiring. We saw in practice today he got demoted to the 4th line. Joel Eriksson Ek, nothing really to write home about. Jordan Greenway, nothing to write home about. pretty much any of the forwards. Nothing really to write home about unless your name is Zucker. So
Yeah, Zucker. We talked about this before last week.
the revenge tour.
Yeah, he looks like he's comfortable again, and
Weird.
Yeah, imagine that. And to your point, Matt Dumba. I mean, he looks like a man on fire. Like he looks like a guy who got a taste of stardom last year when he scored. 12 goals in like 2 months.
30-goal aspirations for Dumba this year.
Right, and he looks like he looks like he's got that carrot dangling in front of him. He's got that 30-goal carrot, and he wants it bad, and that's great. And this team is going to need that 100% to even sniff the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think it was FSN or it might have been NBC. I can't remember which broadcast it was on, but they threw up a graphic of defensemen in recent memory that have hit like 30 goals, and there's not a
many.
big list.
Yeah.
Like
Mike Green.
Yeah,
That was it.
Man, remember when Mike Green was amazing, and then he just straight jumped off
he was
a cliff?
always like a power play specialist, and he never really did much else. And then
He's a supercharged Brad Hunt.
yeah, essentially he really was. I mean, he was very much just made an absolute killing on that Washington power play because teams rightfully so paid so much attention to Ovechkin, and he just made an absolute killing off of that. But otherwise, not so much.
Actually, speaking of Brad Hunt, I kind of like how the power play looks when he's out there.
Yeah.
I think there's a little more, it's a little more fluid when he's out
Sure.
there on the power play, and he does have a power play assist already this season.
Yeah.
Obviously, that is his calling card. He
Yeah.
is the power play specialist, and he'll probably be kind of in and out of the lineup when Greg Patterin returns, if he returns. But with the Wild needing offense, you really kind of have to make a case to keep him in the lineup just because he can bring you some via the power play.
Yeah.
So he's kind of been a pleasant, insertion into the lineup through 2 games. So there, I found another positive. There you go. For those people who are going to yell at me for being negative, but
I mean, if anyone's yelling at anybody for being negative at this point, they kind of need to wake up a little bit. And not to say that you need to be like, burn it down, the Wild suck, I hate the
wake
Wild.
up and smell Frank's diapers.
Don't do that. Trust me. Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. As far as the negativity goes, like, I don't even think it's negativity at this point. It's just, you have to be realistic. And that's where you draw the line. It's like, you just went over some positives. And, hey, Dumbo looks great. Zucker looks good. Brad Hunt is a good piece for where he's at. I'm sure there's some other things we can kind of dig for. On the whole, the team doesn't look great.
No.
In pretty much any facet
Those
of the
3 parts do not
game.
make the whole great.
Does not equal a playoff contender. But I think that's fine to be realistic and say, yeah, this team just isn't really that good. It's another thing to go full, negative on the bit and talk about, how garbage this team is and always will be, and, to just kind of secrete negativity from every possible pore of your being. I think that stuff gets really old, and that's something that I think we've done a good job on this show of avoiding over the years with such a mediocre hockey team.
mix good with bad.
Right, but you've got to be real. Just be real. Like, being negative is so easy because you're, unless your team wins the Stanley Cup every season, you're right at some point. And that's the part that bothers me about all these people that just rail on the Wild over and over again. Like, Wild fans don't know what they're getting into. Like, Wild fans are completely oblivious to how good their team is. These Twitter parody accounts that do nothing but yap about how crappy this team is. And I know it's not just one of them. So it's just, you've got to be real about this team and just know what you're getting into. And the fact that I was talking with a couple of coworkers about it this morning, this team's ceiling is making the playoffs and getting destroyed. Mm-hmm. This team's ceiling is sneaking into the playoffs and getting just mopped off the ice. And that's just the reality of it. And the basement, unfortunately, is much lower. I don't think that they'll be in the bottom 5 of the teams in the league, but that's just kind of where this team is right now. They're somewhere in the lower middle, and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, the other, I guess one other positive is you look at the Central Division, and nobody in that division outside of Colorado is off to a
a good start.
Yeah.
Colorado 2-0, but then the only other teams in the division that have won a game are St. Louis. They've won 1 out of 2. Nashville 1 out of 2. Winnipeg has won 1 out of 3, and their defense just looks atrocious right now. And Morrissey is out.
Who knew Dustin Byfuglien was the the linchpin of that defense?
Mikhail Granlund can sleep easier at night. Right. Chicago has gone 0-1. See, nobody's played any hockey. And Wild 0-2. Dallas 0-3. The Stars, who are, very, very consensus, to be a top team in the Central and the Conference even.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of fluff, but
yeah. Well, like I said, there's very small sample size, but that's just kind of another small positive for the Wild, is that nobody in the division outside of Colorado is off to a steaming start. So
yeah, and Colorado's, I think we can kind of say they're the real deal. They're a playoff team. So if you want to scratch and claw for another positive, the Wild came out Saturday night and kind of stunk up the joint for the first 10 minutes or so. But after that, I felt like they played with Colorado. I felt like they looked like they belong on the ice with Colorado. After that first terrible diaper-like 10 minutes, they played the Avs to a 2-2 tie, with an empty netter. So, really a 2-1 in the last 50 minutes of the game. That's not bad. And for a team that's a real deal team like the Avs, to play with them like that, it's not bad. And it, gives you a glimmer of hope with the Wild that maybe they can play up to the competition, at least on occasion, to make it a hockey game.
Yeah, I noted somewhere in the third period that is a scenario in which we've seen previously the Wild go down 2-0 early in Denver. They mail it in and they just get absolutely demolished. It's usually 7-0 or 6-2, some kind of just demolition variety line brawls of the
Gabriel
of the likes.
Landeskog takes a cheap shot at someone.
Yeah. So that's good on them for not packing it in and just saying, well, we'll get them next time. They tried, but when push came to shove, they couldn't get the tying marker.
Yeah.
So that kind of just becomes a time is a flat circle type of deal again, where the Wild just push, and they just can't score.
Yeah.
So those are our kind of takeaways from the first two games. Anything else to add to that?
No, I got anything else pertinent right now. That's about all that can be said.
All right, since we have just a couple of games, we don't really have any other big talking points to go on, since there really hasn't been anything major happen in the Wild in the first couple of games. No, crumbling injuries or, absolutely dynamite play or, the opposite. So we're just going to kind of dive into the mailbag here.
Sure.
And answer your questions that you submitted via our podcast Twitter account at GATG Wild Podcast. The first question in the patented mailbag is from Ben Gordon. What do you guys think will be some of the changes Bill Guerin makes, and how long do you think he waits to pull the trigger on them?
I think we see something much like we saw with Fenton last year, where he sat on this team for a couple of months.
Yeah, kind of feel it out.
Yeah, and so I don't see Guerin making a move, beyond maybe some re-signings, which I don't even know that he's got anything left to really do there, because he's got bridge deals on a lot of his RFAs. So, I don't see anything happening until January, like we saw last year, January, February, leading up to the trade deadline. Honestly, we defended Fenton doing it at the time. It made sense. You really got to see this team. It's one thing being an outsider and looking at a roster and being like, oh, I'm going to replace that guy, and I'm going to replace that guy, and I'm going to replace that guy, and we're going to trade for this guy. But sometimes you just have to see a guy. You really have to use your hockey eyes, to kind of judge a player and kind of see how he fits in with that team, and sometimes even fits in with the locker room and that kind of thing. And, then go from there as far as the analytics on how they're playing, because, even though it's year to year, it can change. on a player where it's just like, anybody can look up a player's advanced stats from last season and make some moves accordingly. But, you really want to get as much input as you can as a general manager. So seeing your players in person, I think, is very important. I think that's why we're going to see another kind of half season roughly before Guerin makes any major moves.
I'm even kind of skeptical of in-season moves from Guerin. You just look at the roster, like say the Wild just kind of continue on this trajectory that they've started the season with. Say they are just a bottom feeder for most of the year.
Yeah.
They don't really have any like parts that they can just straight sell off as like rentals at the trade deadline. The only player on an expiring UFA contract is Mikko Koivu, and he's got the 35 plus no movement clause.
Right.
So does he want to go to somewhere else to try and take a stab at a winner? Like, that's maybe a question, but that's kind of a coin flip to me, and it might not even be less than that. So nobody else I really see moving like by the deadline, unless it's like just a hockey trade, which doesn't really happen unless you're Paul Fenton, but that's only because Paul Fenton was just getting fleeced by David Poyle and the Carolina general manager. His name escapes me.
I forget who he was.
Don Waddell. He was a Wild GM candidate.
Yep.
It is very difficult for me to see, somebody moved out. Like, eventually, I think I hit on this once, like, for the Wild to have Kirill Kaprizov come over next year, they got to make some space for him because they are just stacked at wing, top to bottom.
Yeah.
So, of the young players, somebody's going to have to go that maybe not be playing up to snuff. But I don't know if I see that happening during the season. I feel like Guerin would want to give them, a full season chance to kind of make their claim to sticking around. But I could be wrong. Like, maybe nobody's going to take Victor Rask. I'm sorry. That's another positive. We haven't seen Victor Rask in the first two games. So.
Yeah, that guy has got bio written all over him.
Yeah, next year.
Yeah, and we said that last season, like a week after he was acquired. I think it's possible that Devin Dubnyk gets moved. Not probable because he would have to be good at that point for him to get moved.
Right.
And otherwise, what is a team trading for? Like a really, really good backup goalie, basically, is what he equates to with a higher cap hit than you would want out of a backup.
And somebody could, they make a right offer at the deadline who was looking for maybe a goalie for another year beyond this, which he has before he's a UFA, then maybe that's something you take a look at. But can you stomach trade deadline beyond end of season of your starting goaltender, Alex Stalock?
I think, and it really is probably going to lean on Capo Kakinen's season in Iowa.
Or maybe even Matt Robson.
Who
knows?
Yeah, we talk about Kakinen. He really fell off last season as the season wore on. And it was his first year in North America, so it's like, you're going to have a little bit of fatigue probably. So it wasn't that, sad about that, seeing that trend. But I don't think they have a whole lot there. I just think that it's a possibility, just given kind of Dubnyk, I think, has 2 years left on his deal. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know. Not much there. The more I think about it, though, Koivu, man, that's an interesting player. If he wants to, which I don't see Koivu as the type of guy who would want to leave to chase a cup. But, dealing him and if a team can fit him in the cap for 2 months, I mean, you could do a whole lot worse as far as like third or fourth line centers on a contending team. Plays great defense and wins faceoffs. Like that's a great move for a contending team. I just don't know that he's going to be game for that.
Right, and I think that's kind of a situation where you kind of have to see where is he actually at, like what does he want to do beyond this year? Because I don't think either way there's a place for him on the Wild roster beyond this year, but it kind of remains to be seen what he wants to do beyond this year. Say he doesn't really have a good year following his injury from last year, then I could see a scenario in which he just hangs it up. But
I said that after his injury immediately last year. I said this, he's probably going to play out his contract, and that'll be it. And who would blame him?
nobody.
Right.
Who are the Rubes going to pick on when he retires?
Oh, Dumba. For no reason. No, I don't know. They'll pick on everybody. They'll just ragdoll everyone because that's what Rubes do.
Yeah, Zuccarello will probably be next in line.
Oh,
for me.
yeah. He's got a nice contract. He'll definitely
He's a nice guy, and
Yeah.
he's got really good qualities to his game.
Yep.
But
he will get ragdolled.
Yep. Because, he totally was the one who's at fault for that contract.
Yeah. Yeah. How dare he sign that?
Yeah. Shame on him for taking the money.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question into the mailbag is from Minnesota 1699. Which of the following left wing is most likely to be traded? Zucker, Fiala, Donato, or Greenway? It's pretty clear there isn't a fit with the current 12 forwards, and with too many left wing holes at center and right wing, someone is going to likely have to be moved at some point.
I
Which
disagree
we
with
kind of
that.
just hit on with the
Yeah.
the Kaprizov impending situation.
Another
but,
left wing. Yeah.
if you're wanting to get value in return, Jason Zucker's probably going to be the most, high qualifying candidate.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just wanting to, get rid of players just to make space and try and keep value like Zucker has, then, I can see, any one of those three really being moved. I'm guessing Bill Guerin might hang on to Jordan Greenway a little while longer just because he has size, and there's such a valuation of size in the NHL.
Yeah.
So that kind of puts it at Fiala and Donato. And if you had to make me pick, I'm just going to say Fiala because that was Paul Fenton's golden child, and I see more of an upside with Donato. And even though he's not off to a good start in 2 games, I still think he has more of the upside in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I thought of Greenway just because of his size. I think more NHL teams would come calling for him
That's
just because
fair.
of that size. And I think that's kind of maybe my approach to it, is just see what happens when the phone rings. It'd be lovely to say, well, I want to trade Kevin Fiala. If nobody wants Kevin Fiala, you ain't trading Kevin Fiala unless you're giving him away, because Paul Fenton is not in a front office right now. So you can't bamboozle whichever team that is into taking him. So you're just kind of taking what you can get, and I agree. You kind of have to make some space.
When I think of Kevin Fiala now, I just, in terms of like trade discussion, I think of the episode in The Simpsons where Homer gets put in the insane asylum with Michael Jackson.
Because he wears a pink shirt to
and
work.
he has insane stamped on his hand, and no matter how hard he tries, he can't scrub it off. So I just imagine Kevin Fiala having Paul Fenton stamped on his
Yeah.
hand, and no
Crazy
matter
pills.
how hard he tries, he can't scrub it off. And that's just a red flag for anyone who comes and takes a look at him as, oh, you're that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my pick, and I hope you appreciated that deep cut Simpsons reference.
That was a good one.
I
That
just
was
threw out.
the Michael Jackson part of the episode was just fantastic.
It
like
was.
how Michael Jackson is now a fat white guy was just tremendous, and yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Good old Simpsons. All right. Next question from Sad Twins fan.
Oh God,
Aren't we all?
yeah. Don't get us started on that. Why?
Been a rough weekend for me.
Crying to my Homer towel.
Yeah, at least you have a safe space. I have no excuse.
I have a door to shut.
He asks, or they ask, sorry, not sure what. Anyway,
Zer.
yeah, they ask, what do you think would need to happen for Craig Leopold to buy into a rebuild? Is he too worried about the current season ticket purchases or lack thereof to go in on being bad for a few seasons? That is exactly it. And we've kind of hit on this a little previously, that is exactly why he is not going to commit to a rebuild. He wants to do the, retool on the fly, in air quotes, essentially, is he doesn't want the bottom line to be hurt by just going into full rebuild. The Wild aren't the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're still not going to be crapping out cash when they do a rebuild. And we saw this, as we noted at one point, in the non-playoff years from 2009 to 12. Like, attendance was down. The Wild were reportedly not making money during that time, especially when they signed Parise and Suter.
Which is wild.
They had those very front-loaded contracts. Which maybe now they could possibly still hit the bottom line, but the Wild aren't going to be overly profitable in that time, and that's what he sees. Like, him saying he wants to just continue to try and build around the core of the team and win the Stanley Cup, that's just window dressing. What he's actually telling you is going into a full-on rebuild hurts his bottom line, which is why he owns the team, to make money. That is why I'm not going to get into it.
I'm gonna take the opposite stances for a sec here, and it's not easy to defend billionaires.
No.
But if he wanted to make money, he should have invested in I don't know, China, gold. I don't know, Facebook. Wait, no, that's a bad example. Bitcoin. There we go. So if he wanted to make money, he wouldn't have bought a sports team. I mean, they make money and they increase in value exponentially. But especially the NHL, I mean, you're not raking in the cash if you're in American market necessarily. I mean, there are some that do, but allegedly somehow the state of hockey isn't a super, super profitable market. We don't have an absurd cost of living here like some of the major markets, so you're not going to make as much money. So I think that what it boils down to is Craig Leopold is still very much a fan. And that's why he's owned 2 hockey teams. It wasn't, I mean, he couldn't have been making a whole lot of money in Nashville, with the teams that they had for many years. So I think I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Not saying that he's 100% correct, but he is a hockey fan. He wants to see his hockey team win. It's just like pitching this to a lot of fans. I'd say, I mean, roughly, what percentage of fans right now, if you said, do you want to see the Wild completely tear it down and not win anything for 3 to 5 years, how many fans are going to go for that? Maybe half? Probably not even, right? Like maybe a third if you're lucky. And so Craig Leopold is just simply in that majority because he is a fan of his $500 million toy that he owns and wants to see them win. And is he a little bit delusional about the state of that team? Abso-freaking-lutely. But he invested a lot of money into them, and he thinks that with Parise and Suter, who he's paying a lot of money to, on the team, there's no reason why they should have to rebuild because you've got these great players you paid $1 bajillion for. And so I just don't think that he's going to ever be convinced of that, especially as long as Parise and Suter are on the team. Once they're off the team, you've got a lot of flexibility with contracts, and you can say, hey, we've got these young guys, can we kind of lose a little bit, get rid of everybody old and expensive, bring in some young blood, try to get a higher pick? Sure. But with Parise and Suter on the team, I mean, he thought he was locked into 13 years of playoffs, baby, and it's going to be really hard to convince him otherwise.
I don't know why when you said $500 million toy, I just instantly thought of whenever I buy, like, not that I do this often, but like an expensive like cat toy, it's hardly touched, and then they just find like absolute joy in the most garbage of
Cardboard
household
boxes.
items. Yeah. That's neither here nor there.
If you want to think of Craig Leopold on his back playing with a giant ball of yarn, have at it.
The Wild are his ball of yarn. And just to kind of add to this is the other thing that he has to compete with essentially to make money, not necessarily in the NHL, but in this market is there are so many other different sports options in the market. Yeah. He's got to deal with the Vikings who run this town no matter if they're insanely good or insanely bad.
Tell me about it.
They run the town. Yeah,
yep.
you can write a novel on this.
I know.
Did
you hear K-fans that? Never mind.
The Twins are in the playoffs now after almost a decade of absolute trash.
Yeah.
The Timberwolves, I mean, they're the Wolves, but it is the NBA, and that does appeal to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Then you have Gopher sports or
Right.
college sports, I should say, not just singling out Gophers, but here in the Twin Cities, the Gophers are the big college entity.
Yep.
But then you go around the state, you have Duluth, St. Cloud, Mankato, those colleges that also are good. They have good teams, and they become better viewing options, better paying options than going to a Wild game.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to deal with that, which is another reason why he doesn't want to full-on tear it down, because people are just going to mosey on to whatever else is hot in town and give them their money. So row the boat.
Yeah, and I think, we're a little bit rare in that we are a major market that has a D1 college program.
Right.
Not many,
No.
like there's not many NHL teams that compete with an NCAA Division I team in their own hometown. And so, and I think that I've never really liked the whole state of hockey thing and all of the the head patting that the team does for its fans. Because, this isn't really a great professional hockey market. This is an incredible amateur hockey market.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you will never see high school games more packed than you will. And I'm not just talking about the state tournament where everyone, beats off to those attendance numbers every year. But I mean, go to a local arena and see a hockey game and see how many people are there. It's a lot.
There's a lot.
But that doesn't make us better professional hockey fans, and that's always kind of the issue that I've had. But it kind of reinforces your point. He's got a lot of competition here, and it's just, I think that the one way that you will, to kind of go back on my point earlier, the one way you will convince Craig Leopold of a rebuild is if the Wild hit kind of rock bottom without it, and I'm talking attendance really tanks. Attendance is really hurt. Fans really get fed up of the same crap over and over again. They've seen Batman Forever how many times now? To bring back our old bit. And they're just tired of watching Batman Forever. And, attendance starts to hit the 10 to 12,000 mark, which I think is entirely possible. I think there was probably some games towards the end of last year where they didn't announce that crowd, but that's what the crowd was. And so I think that's, when you start hitting that consistently and this team really starts to, get hurt at the gate, I think that's when you see it change.
All right, just a couple more questions here in our mailbag before we wrap up the show. Question from Reinstein. Do you think Parise calling out the coach is a good move on his part? I think he needs to keep his mouth shut, but that's my opinion. That I missed.
Yeah, I don't know that I am familiar with that happening either.
Let me see if I can find it. But
I find it hard to believe that Parise would directly go after Bruce.
yeah, that seems... I don't know why you would, because usually you get some with Bruce, you just go into his office and air it out. But
yeah,
let's see. Oh, it was in regards to Bruce's often switching up the lines.
Oh.
And it's just basically kind of getting chemistry on passes and breakouts and junk. And I don't buy a whole lot into that. And Parise is, as we've learned here in the last 6-7 months, he's kind of become pretty vocal. So, and he's the highest paid player on the team. So, he kind of buys that ability to kind of, to speak up essentially. So if Bruce is really hurt by it, we all know Bruce isn't going to shy away from letting him know how he feels. And so
when did he make the?
This was after this game Saturday night.
Okay, because Parise got essentially shifted to the third line in that game. So
I don't know. I don't really put a whole lot into that. I think, sometimes I do like it when a player speaks out. I think there's times to do it, times not to. And this one is, hey, he's just frustrated, essentially, is how I kind of read into this.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that Bruce probably is receptive to that. And, Bruce has even made jokes about how much he makes line changes. And I think that's just the NHL now. Like, how often do you see lines get...
Yeah, like
this
last... I don't think this is necessarily a Bruce thing.
No.
Like, we saw it with Yo would just constantly shift the lines. Had Jacques would shift the lines. I don't know if this is necessarily a Bruce thing. And to your point, it's kind of more of an NHL thing. It just... Line shuffling is what it is nowadays.
So, and we saw that Rantanen, Landeskog, McKinnon line last year.
Well, they stayed together because...
dominate the NHL. But they got split up for a short period of time.
Right.
Like, you are not safe in the NHL. There is no Russian five anymore. There is no, Solani, Curry, there is no, the sanctity of lines is not safe. It's just not there anymore. And that's just kind of how the NHL is. And coaches are constantly looking for any kind of spark or anything to that effect just to kind of, inject what life they possibly can, because that's all coaches can do is mess with the lines. And is it overcoaching? I mean, yeah, maybe a little bit, but that's just kind of where we're at with the NHL.
And then another Bruce-related question from State of Hockey guy. What is he doing? Notes Stahl, Spurgeon, Zuccarello terrible early on, and then Donato getting shuffled down to the fourth line. Kind of what is he doing? Well, I mean, he's essentially trying to shuffle the lines, and something we kind of also have to keep in the back of our mind when we ask a question of what is Bruce doing is Bruce is trying to win in the here and now, because Bruce is in the last year of his contract. He doesn't have, a safety net of another year.
Yeah.
So if, he might make more moves that you kind of aren't used to or raise your eyebrow at now. So I think Bruce is really trying to win in the here and now. And, unfortunately, that might have to come at the expense of a young player getting shoveled down into the bottom six.
Yeah, it just kind of is what it is. I mean, it's you don't want to say desperation, but it's kind of desperation.
Another question from Minnesota 1699. Any thoughts about prospects DeWard, Lodny, and Sokolov being healthy scratched in Iowa for first two games from more experienced minor leaguers? Is it more coaching staff trying to ease them in? Well, Sokolov was there last year, and he was kind of a consistent healthy scratch towards the end of the year, which is kind of a concerning sign for him. DeWar and Lodny, I got to imagine they're just trying to maybe get them eased in a little bit to professional hockey.
I think those guys are both 20, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, I don't think that, I wouldn't read too much into it, especially, I think easing them in probably is definitely the way to go. A lot of the Iowa Wild mostly stayed intact, and so I think a lot of guys on that team know the systems pretty well down there.
A lot of returning players.
Right. So I assume
think we'll
it's
see
just
them get eased in.
I think it's just that they just haven't quite learned the system. They probably didn't get a ton of training camp relative to maybe what they're used to or maybe what NHL teams see. If there's still healthy scratches in a month, or even a couple of weeks, I have some concerns. Ideally, you probably want to see them sprinkled in the lineup a little bit here going forward, and then kind of be full-time regulars, like I said, in about a month or two. But opening weekend, no, that doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't bother me at all.
And then the last question from a friend of the show, Hal. He asks, he thanks our dedication to returning this season to the podcast. Much appreciated. And then he asks, what are our opinions of the sky is falling fan base comments on social media after the first two road games at two of the NHL's top teams' home rinks? Which is a fair thing. I mean, the Wild could play, Ottawa and who else is terrible? They could play Ottawa and L.A. and maybe it's different. He's got a point. Those are two really good teams you play And next week at this time, we could be talking about how the Wild won their lone game of the week because everything's good. I think they have 2 games actually.
Yeah, they do.
Till we record again, but I'm just being sarcastic.
No,
but,
I'm sure.
yeah, no, it's right, and I'm not jumping off the cliff just yet. And again, it's 2 games, a very small sample size, so
Yeah.
I have a more rational mind when it comes to the sky is falling.
You're more rational than social media? No way.
Yeah, sometimes. I get a little eccentric when I watch a football team on Sundays, but
Yeah,
when it comes to the Wild, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
So I'm not jumping off the cliff, and social media can be a tire fire.
Yeah, I like we said earlier in the show, just be real about things. Like this team, you don't need to think the sky is falling. Like you said, those are 2 pretty good hockey teams, and like I noted earlier, it looks like they played with Colorado, and that's saying something. Do I think that this is a playoff team still? I mean, maybe barely, and that's kind of the highest upside we can think of. But yeah, it kind of is what it is, and social media, my God, I mean, don't take any cues about anything from social media. I mean, look at Vikings Twitter, for Christ's sake. It just don't give any kind of credence to anything you see in social. It's purely entertainment. I mean, you've got to look at it as social media can be a lot of fun, but
then it can be fun, and then you get told to stick to sports.
Well, there's that. But it's just nothing that should be taken as any kind of serious analysis. Especially, I look at it a little bit differently because I don't follow a lot of quote unquote fans. A lot of the people that I follow are writers, like I used to be, and so out of those people, you kind of get some reasoned takes because we're really kind of trying to look at things objectively. But if you're just going off of pure fans and fans of the Minnesota Wild that don't try to look at things objectively, they're just fans.
Right.
That's what you're going to get. You're going to get a subjective view that's just hellaciously overreacting to things, and that's what fans do because that's
the nature.
you're fanatical. That's in the name.
It's their nature. So, yeah, that is the mailbag. Thank you to everyone for firing in your questions on short notice. What do we got? We got left here before we call it a show.
Well, we would be remiss if we didn't mention we made some scripts. We didn't do great preparing for last week. I don't know if this is, again, time is a flat circle. So there were some jerseys that we missed last week. We said last week we're not doing a jersey segment this year, but we talked about a couple of the new jerseys for this year. One thing we missed, the Canes were not the only team with a redesign. And it's kind of funny that we missed this one because Vancouver redesigned their jerseys by simply dropping the name Vancouver from their jerseys, which is horribly disappointing. The Flying Skate will be back this season, and that's awesome. But the redesign that they did by just simply getting rid of Vancouver on their jerseys is a serious sad trombone type moment. Another new jersey in the NHL, the Sabres have a 50th anniversary jersey that looks pretty good. It's still not the Dominic Hasek era jersey that I would love to see, but it is what it is. The St. Louis Blues will be wearing their 90s throwbacks. I think it's a very limited basis this year, but they will be wearing them. That's a jersey that, don't get me wrong, it's not a good jersey.
It's just so
but
90s.
It's just so nostalgic.
Just the essence of the 90s.
I mean, people love to hate on that jersey, and I understand why. It's so over the top. But yeah, it's just very, very 90s. A couple other things, I don't know if we covered this or not. Washington wearing the red jerseys again this year. I don't believe they did. Was it the white ones last year?
They didn't.
No, they didn't wear any last year. That's right. They didn't wear any throwbacks.
They just had straight.
So they did
and
bring
road.
back Giles' favorite jersey, or one of Giles' favorite jerseys in the NHL, the red throwbacks.
Yes.
So that's fun to look forward to. Just a couple of things that we missed, and we feel terrible for missing them, but it happens.
Apparently, I thought at some point we were going to get a Golden Knights.
They are.
Jersey?
They're releasing a third jersey later in the season, apparently.
Yeah.
And there's been much ado about what color that jersey will be. There's a lot of speculation that it's going to be a gold jersey. I don't know if I buy that or not. I'm
I
not sure.
saw something. It leaked. Or maybe I just
What?
Maybe maybe I just dreamed that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just have dreams and I can't help it, folks.
Yeah. In other news, the Oilers' third jersey is still bad.
You have one job, Edmonton.
Oh, one job.
You're just so bad.
Yeah.
Do you have a hot take on Carolina's new road jersey? I like it, but
We talked about it last week.
some
I
don't.
think you said what, B plus?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did. Sorry.
No, I'm with you on that. I think it's a nice move. I'm kind of bored with their logo, and their jerseys were I felt very, just very bland. So the canes vertically or the diagonally, I mean, I don't. It's okay. I'm maybe lower than a B plus on it, maybe more like a B minus, but C plus. But I don't know. It's all right. I mean, I think they look fine.
Their home jerseys, the Reds, have really grown on me. I kind of like them.
Yeah.
I got kind of torn up on social media about this, but the not that this is new, but the Penguins' main yellow jersey.
The third jersey that they're using.
Do you like it? No.
I'm never big on yellow jerseys.
See, it kind of fell into that yellow category for
Yeah.
me, so I was like, I don't really like it.
I've really railed against the Predators using a yellow jersey as a dark color, just because yellow is a natural eye irritant, and I don't think it should be used as a primary color. For the Penguins, and this is something I've really stumped for, I want the 90s jerseys back.
Yes.
And this is just, again, I'm a 90s kid, but the Jaromir Jagr, Mario Lemieux era diagonal Pittsburgh. I know you can only have so many diagonal designs in the NHL,
Right.
and the Rangers kind of have the market cornered. But it is a throwback, as to which I noted in my third jersey article last August, if you remember back that far. That is actually what their third jerseys or their original jerseys looked like. They were baby blue at the time because that was the team's colors, but it had Pittsburgh diagonally across the jersey. Then they went to the skating penguin, which was glorious. But I wouldn't mind seeing that back as a third jersey, as an alternate, something you're only going to wear 5-10 times a year. Hell yeah, bring it back. Let's see it.
Yeah.
I want to see Sid the Kid in those jerseys. Not that he's anywhere close to retiring, but I'd like to see Sidney Crosby in those jerseys at some point.
Right. No, that's very, very agreeable. So
Yeah,
I would agree. So, yeah, I think
sure. Where are we at for
think-
time? Are we
I think
under
we got-
the Schreier threshold?
I think so. We better wrap it up quick here because I think. Yeah, we're just gonna get under the threshold for Tom. So.
Perfect.
So yeah, that will do it for us. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit more to go on next week, but probably not because there's no games.
Yeah.
So we'll probably have another hefty mailbag segment. So hopefully, you come up with some good questions in the week. So send those in. We're gonna get out of here. We're gonna go watch the Twins get swept again because time is a flat circle. Follow Ben Remington on Twitter at Ben Remington. Giles Farrell on Twitter at Giles Farrell. Podcast at GATG Wild Podcast. Again, check out zonecoverage.com/subscribe. Promo code GATG20, or just leave us an iTunes rating if money's a little bit tight. Which we get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, all those fun stuff. So you can download, subscribe via those platforms. Also on YouTube, if you love to just plug into YouTube while you're at work and just let the tunes go or whatever. But, hey, however you take it in is cool as long
Sure.
as you take it in. So that will do it for us this week, and we will be back at you next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.